Okay, good morning, good afternoon. It is officially 12:02. I've done my grocery shopping that I needed to do for the day. Now I'm headed back home. Hopefully get some rest before I gotta work tonight. But I just wanted to share my thoughts right now about a particular person. And I've been thinking about this guy because when I think about movies, part of what I think about is my cousin Tony. I'm going to tell you what I mean. Now, I've always loved movies ever since I was a child. And I learned to appreciate movies and understand them more and dive deeper into them more when I became a teenager. That's when I really started to pay attention to actors, writers, directors, production companies, motion picture scores, things like that. And I really started to dive into the library of certain artists just to get to know their work. And one of the people in my life that I don't think he realized it, accidentally inspired a bunch of movies. Because I was thinking about it in my head about how many movies I've watched because of this guy, and how many times he was right, and a few times where I disagreed. My cousin Tony is from my father's side of my family. He was, I mean, no offense to Tony, but he's relatively older than me. When I was a child, in my mind, he was already a young adult, maybe a older teenager. Definitely by the time, like he was talking to me about movies, in my mind, he was already a grown-up and I was still a kid. But I revered him on a certain level. I respected him. I thought he was really cool. He really loved comic books. He really loved movies. And a lot of times when I would go visit, my family in the Bronx, the adults would be in the other room, and all of my cousins there, they were much older than me. So a lot of times they would let me watch movies that he had in the living room. And he always made some excellent suggestions. And there's so many movies that I would not know about had it not be for him. And even conversations he's had with my mom about certain movies. Like, for example, because of Tony, my mom took me to the theaters to see True Lies when it first came out. He wouldn't stop talking about the movie. He talked about how great it was, what a great action movie, and how surprisingly funny it was. An Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Arnold action comedy directed by James Cameron, And we saw the movie, we absolutely loved it. He suggested Terminator 2 a couple of years before that, or a year before that, I can't remember when it came out. But then over the course of many years, Tony is the reason why I got into Quentin Tarantino. Because he told me about this movie called Pulp Fiction. And I still had not seen it until years later through one of my best friends, Brody. He's the one that actually loaned me, I think it was the VHS, and I put in the tape of Pulp Fiction and ended up loving it. But Tony got me into Quentin Tarantino movies and talked to me about Pulp Fiction, how fascinating it was. Tony is the guy that got me into Kevin Smith movies with the movie Clerks, and I became a huge fan after I saw Chasing Amy, and I ended up loving Kevin Smith as a filmmaker, more so as a writer than anything else. And then like Toy Story, I had no real interest in ever seeing Toy Story, because by the time Toy Story had come out, I think I was a young teenager, and I felt like I'm too old for these cartoon movies. I'm not really into that. But Tony kept talking about like how awesome it was and how many hidden adult jokes were in that movie. And this was something like, kind of unheard of in a children's movie, or at least not as obvious as Toy Story made it, And he was right. I ended up loving that movie. I remember back in like 95 or 94, I can't remember when it came out, when Independence Day came out in theaters. And before it came out, they released a trailer. And the trailer was simply a shot of the White House and a beam of light shooting into the White House and blowing it up. And Tony was saying how terrifying that was, and how he was looking forward to seeing the movie because of that. And because of that, it inspired me to want to go see the movie. In this instance, it turned out I ended up absolutely loving the movie, and Tony actually said it sucked. And I remember being surprised by his reaction. I spoke to him about it like a year later, I think it was. Hey, what did you think about Independence Day? He was like, I thought it kind of sucked. And I'm like, wow. And that was the extent of the conversation. We didn't get like into a deep dive into it, but I was really shocked because I saw Independence Day July 2nd, July 3rd, and July 4th. I saw it 3 days in a row, and I absolutely loved it. I still love it to this day. I recognize, its flaws and how cheesy it is, and it is not a great film. In a lot of ways, it's poorly written and poorly acted, but it's such a fun movie to watch. And I'm still inspired by this, to this day, by the president's speech. In fact, probably the only time I've ever been inspired by a president's speech, it was in a movie, not even in real life. But yeah, Tony inspired a lot of movies. He inspired the Star Wars series. I ended up watching the Star Wars movies. I really didn't grow up with the Star Wars movies, with the exception of Empire Strikes Back, because my mom had a VHS of Empire Strikes Back in the house. I don't know where she got it. I don't know if she bought it or if it was given to her as a gift or if somebody left it in her house. But I could never imagine my mom going to the store and buying Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. Well, we had it. We had 2 VHS when I was like 4 or 5 years old. We had Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and we had Ghostbusters. And I watched both of those movies repeatedly. But it was Tony that really got me into Star Wars movies, and when the special editions came out in the late 90s, and I believe in 97, they released all original movies with brand new special effects. I went to the theaters to go see it. Unfortunately, I never could get into Star Trek. And I know Tony was into Star Trek like crazy. I could never really get into Star Trek. That's the one thing that Tony did not inspire in me. But he was just one of the coolest cousins I've ever had. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because, I love all my cousins. I love all my cousins from that family. Louie, Willie, Tony, and Rolly. You guys are like the best. And but Tony was definitely the one that really like inspired certain things. Even comic books, like I really got into comic books after talking to Tony and seeing his collection. And his collection wasn't exactly his collection. It was a collection that accumulated, I think, from his brothers before him, and then he continued that. That's just a guess on my part, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, and because of Tony, Danny Ketch is my Ghost Rider. When the new Ghost Rider comic book came out in 1990, and the new Ghost Rider was a character by the name of Danny Ketch, who was from Forest Hill, Queens, like he was a regular guy. That's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be that regular guy that gained the power of the demons and decided to do something good with it, And so that's why when the movie came out all those years later and it was Johnny Blaze, I'm like, that's not Ghost Rider. I mean, it is, but it's not my Ghost Rider. My Ghost Rider will always be Danny Ketch. So Tony, I just want to say thank you for inspiring me and my family to see a plethora of movies based on your critiques, your opinions, and your passion. Because like I feel like I developed a lot of that passion from you as well. The way I talk about movies, the way I express my sentiment about films, about filmmakers, about actors, about musicians, writers and cinematographers. Like I have a reverence for film in a way that I don't have a reverence for anything else. It's a very special feeling, a special connection. And you Tony, you're a big part of that. So I appreciate all of your passion and all of your opinions because it inspired a lot in me. So thank you. I just felt like talking about that. I'm home now. Let me get these cold cuts inside and I'm going to have myself a good lunch. God bless you. I love you. Take care. Bye.